All right, just finished AV7, so I'm caught up with morning of today. Let's go ahead and hit Bible AV8 since I'm already just at it. I'm not feeling too tired yet, so should be able to make that work. Just close, open, Bible, Exodus. So AV8 will be 14 to 22 for Exodus. Exodus 14. Jehovah now said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites that they should turn back and encamp before Pihahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, within view of Baal Zephon. You are to encamp facing it by the sea. Then Pharaoh will say about the Israelites, they are wandering in confusion in the land. The wilderness has closed in on them. I will allow Pharaoh's heart to become obstinate, and he will chase after them, and I will glorify myself by means of Pharaoh and all his army. And the Egyptians will certainly know that I am Jehovah." So that is what they did. Later it was reported to the king of Egypt that the people had run away. Immediately Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart regarding the people, and they said, "Why did we do this and release Israel from serving as slaves for us?" So he made his war chariots ready, and he took his people with him. He took 600 chosen chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt, with warriors on every one of them. Thus Jehovah allowed the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to become obstinate, and he chased after the Israelites while the Israelites were going out with confidence. The Egyptians chased after them, and all the chariot horses of Pharaoh and his cavalrymen and his army were catching up with them while they were camping by the sea by Pihahiroth, facing Baal Zephon. When Pharaoh got closer, the Israelites raised their eyes and saw the Egyptians pursuing them. The Israelites became terrified and began to cry out to Jehovah. They said to Moses, "Is it because there are no burial places in Egypt that you have brought us here to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us by leading us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt when we said, 'Let us alone so that we may serve the Egyptians'? For it is better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." Then Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the salvation of Jehovah that he will perform for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never ever see again. Jehovah himself will fight for you, and you will keep silent." Jehovah now said to Moses, "Why do you keep crying out to me? Tell the Israelites that they should break camp. As for you, lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, so that the Israelites may go through the midst of the sea on dry ground. As for me, I am allowing the hearts of the Egyptians to become obstinate, so that they will go in after them. Thus I will glorify myself by means of Pharaoh and all his army, his war chariots, and his cavalrymen. And the Egyptians will certainly know that I am Jehovah, when I glorify myself by means of Pharaoh, his war chariots, and his cavalrymen." Then the angel of the true God, who was going ahead of the camp of Israel, departed and went to their rear, and the pillar of cloud that was in front of them moved to the rear and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. On the one side, it was a dark cloud. On the other side, it was lighting up the night. So the one camp did not come near the other camp all night long. Moses now stretched out his hand over the sea, and Jehovah drove the sea back with a strong east wind all night long, turning the sea basin into dry ground, and the waters divided. So the Israelites went through the midst of the sea on dry ground, while the waters formed a wall on their right hand and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses, his war chariots, and his cavalrymen began going after them into the midst of the sea. During the morning watch, Jehovah looked at the camp of the Egyptians from within the pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw the camp of the Egyptians into confusion. He kept taking wheels off their chariots so that they were driving them with difficulty, and the Egyptians were saying, "Let us free from any contact with Israel, because Jehovah is fighting for them against the Egyptians." Then Jehovah said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may come back over the Egyptians, their war chariots, and their cavalrymen." Moses at once stretched out his hand over the sea, and morning approached, and the sea turned to its normal condition. As the Egyptians fled from it, Jehovah shook the Egyptians off in the midst of the sea. The returning waters covered the war chariots and the cavalrymen, and all of Pharaoh's army who had gone into the sea after them. Not so much as one among them was allowed to survive. But the Israelites walked on dry ground in the midst of the seabed, and the waters formed a wall on their right hand and on their left. Thus Jehovah saved Israel on that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel also saw the great power that Jehovah wielded against the Egyptians, and the people began to fear Jehovah and to put faith in Jehovah and his servant Moses. Okay. Exodus 15. At that time, Moses and the Israelites sang this song to Jehovah. Let me sing to Jehovah, for he has become highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea. My strength and my might is Jah, since he has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. Jehovah is a powerful warrior. Jehovah is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he cast into the sea, and his finest warriors have sunk into the Red Sea. The surging waters covered them. Down into the depths they sank like a stone. Your right hand, O Jehovah, is great in power. Your right hand, O Jehovah, can shatter an enemy. In your great majesty, you can throw down those who rise up against you. You send out your burning anger, and it eats them up like stubble. By a breath from your nostrils, water massed together. They stood still, holding back the floods. The surging waters congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake. I will divide spoil until I am satisfied. I will draw my sword, my hand will subdue them. You blew with your breath, the sea covered them. They sank like lead in majestic waters. Who among the gods is like you, O Jehovah? Who is like you, showing yourself mighty in holiness? The one to be feared with songs of praise, the one doing wonders. You stretched out your right hand, and the earth swallowed them up. In your loyal love, you have led the people whom you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy place of dwelling. Peoples must hear. They will shudder. Anguish will seize the inhabitants of Philistia. At that time, the sheiks of Edom will be terrified, and trembling will take hold of the mighty rulers of Moab. All the inhabitants of Canaan will be disheartened. Fear and dread will fall upon them, because the greatness of your arm. They will be motionless as a stone until your people pass by, O Jehovah, until the people whom you produced pass by. You will bring them and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, the established place that you have prepared for yourself to inhabit, O Jehovah, a sanctuary, O Jehovah, that your hands have established. Jehovah will rule as king forever and ever. Pause. I'm gonna get my juice. When Pharaoh's horses with his war chariots and his cavalrymen went into the sea, then Jehovah brought back the waters of the sea upon them. But the people of Israel walked on dry ground through the midst of the sea. Then Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women followed her with tambourines and with dances. Miriam sang in response to the men. Sing to Jehovah, for he has become highly exalted. Sing to Jehovah. Oh, sorry. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea. Moses later led Israel away from the Red Sea, and they went out to the wilderness of Shur and marched on for 3 days in the wilderness, but they did not find water. They came to Marah, but they were not able to drink water from Marah because it was bitter. That is why he named it Marah. So the people began to murmur against Moses, saying, What are we to drink? He cried out to Jehovah, and Jehovah directed him to a tree. When he drew it into the water, the water became sweet. There he established for them a regulation and a case for judgment, and there he put them to the test. He said, If you will strictly listen to the voice of Jehovah your God, and will do what is right in his eyes, and will pay attention to his commandments, and keep all his regulations, I will not bring upon any of you the diseases that I brought upon the Egyptians, for I, Jehovah, am healing you. After that, they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, so they camped there by the water. Pause for a sec. So I mixed this. It's R.W. Knudsen. It's these expensive juices in glass bottles. I was drinking Mega Antioxidant yesterday, which has apple, carrot, peach, and lemon juice. And I added, I drank half of it, and then I added half grape juice. Turned it into a kind of a gross color, but pretty good. Exodus 16. After they departed from Elim, the entire assembly of the Israelites eventually came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after their departure from the land of Egypt. Then the entire assembly of the Israelites began to murmur against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The Israelites kept saying to them, "If only we had died by Jehovah's hands in the land of Egypt, while we were sitting by pots of meat, while we were eating bread to satisfaction. Now you have brought us out into the wilderness to put this whole congregation to death by famine." Then Jehovah said to Moses, "Here I am raining down bread for you from the heavens, and each of the people should go out and gather his amount day by day, so that I may put them to the test, whether they will walk in my law or not. But on the sixth day, when they prepare what they have gathered, it is to be double the amount that they picked on each of the other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "In the evening you will certainly know that it is Jehovah who brought you out of the land of Egypt. In the morning you will see Jehovah's glory, for he has heard your murmurings against Jehovah. Who are we that you should murmur against us?" Moses continued, "When Jehovah gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning bread to satisfaction, you will see that Jehovah has heard your murmurings, that you are murmuring against him. But who are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against Jehovah." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Tell the entire assembly of the Israelites, come near before Jehovah, for he has heard your murmurings." As soon as Aaron had spoken to the entire assembly of the Israelites, they turned and faced toward the wilderness, and look, Jehovah's glory appeared in the cloud. Jehovah spoke further to Moses, saying, "I have heard the murmurings of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be satisfied with bread, and you will certainly know that I am Jehovah your God." So that evening, quail came and covered the camp. When the layer of dew evaporated, there was a fine, flaky substance on the surface of the wilderness, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they began to say to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread that Jehovah has given you for food. This is what Jehovah has commanded. Each one should gather it according to how much he can eat. You are to take an omer measure for each individual according to the number of people that each of you has in his tent." The Israelites began to do so. They gathered it, some gathering much and some gathering little. When they would measure it by the omer, the one who had gathered much had no surplus, and the one who had gathered little had no shortage. They each gathered it according to what they could eat. Then Moses said to them, "Nobody should leave any of it until the morning." But they did not listen to Moses. When some men left some of it until the morning, it bred worms and stank, and Moses became indignant at them. They would pick it up in the morning by morning, each one according to what he could eat. When the sun got hot, it melted. On the sixth day, they picked up twice as much bread, 2 omer measures for each person. So all the chieftains of the assembly came and reported it to Moses. At that he said to them, "It is what Jehovah has said. Tomorrow there will be a complete rest, a holy Sabbath to Jehovah. Bake what you need to bake and boil what you need to boil, then save whatever is left over and keep it until the morning." So they saved it until the morning, just as Moses had commanded, and it did not stink, nor were there maggots in it. Then Moses said, "Eat it today, because today is a Sabbath to Jehovah. Today you will not find it on the ground. You will pick it up for 6 days, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none." However, some of the people did go out to pick it up on the seventh day, but they found nothing. So Jehovah said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? Take notice of the fact that Jehovah has given you the Sabbath. That is why he is giving you the bread for 2 days on the sixth day. Everyone must stay where he is. Nobody is to leave his locality on the seventh day." So the people observed the Sabbath on the seventh day. The house of Israel named the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed, and the taste was like that of flat cakes with honey. Then Moses said, "This is what Jehovah has commanded. Fill an omer measure of it as something to be kept throughout your generations, so that they may see the bread that I gave you to eat in the wilderness when I was bringing you out of the land of Egypt." So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put it in an omer measure of manna and deposit it before Jehovah as something to be kept throughout your generations. Just as Jehovah commanded Moses, Aaron placed it before the testimony so that it might be preserved. The Israelites ate manna for 40 years until they came to a land that was inhabited. They ate the manna until they came to the frontier of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is a tenth of an ephah measure. Okay. Drink. Exodus 17. The entire assembly of the Israelites departed from the wilderness of Sin by stages according to the order of Jehovah, and they camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So the people began quarreling with Moses and saying, "Give us water to drink." But Moses said to them, "Why are you quarreling with me? Why do you keep putting Jehovah to the test?" But the people were very thirsty for water there, and they kept murmuring against Moses and saying, "Why have you brought us out of Egypt to kill us and our sons and our livestock with thirst?" Finally Moses cried out to Jehovah, "What should I do with this people? A little longer, they will stone me." Then Jehovah said to Moses, "Go ahead of the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel and your rod with which you struck the Nile River. Take it in your hand and walk on. Look, I will be standing before you there on the rock in Horeb. You must strike the rock and water will come out of it, and the people will drink it." Moses did before the eyes of the elders of Israel. So he named the place Massah and Meribah because of the quarreling of the Israelites and because they put Jehovah to the test by saying, "Is Jehovah in our midst or not?" Then the Amalekites came and fought against Israel in Rephidim. At this, Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men for us and go out to fight against the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the rod of the true God in my hand." Then Joshua did just as Moses told him, and he fought against the Amalekites. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. As long as Moses kept his hands lifted up, the Israelites prevailed. But as soon as he would let down his hands, the Amalekites prevailed. When the hands of Moses were heavy, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Then Aaron and Hur, one on each side, supported his hands, so that his hands remained steady until the sun set. Thus Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the sword. Jehovah now said to Moses, "Write this as a memorial in the book and repeat it to Joshua. I will completely wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the heavens." Then Moses built an altar and named it Jehovah Nissi, saying, "This because his hand is against the throne of Jah, Jehovah will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." Okay. Exodus 18. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard all about all that God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, how Jehovah had brought Israel out of Egypt. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, had taken Zipporah, Moses' wife, when she was sent back to him, along with her two sons. One son was named Gershom, because Moses said, "I have become a foreign resident in a foreign land." And the other was named Eliezer, because he said, "The God of my father is my helper, who rescued me from Pharaoh's sword." So Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, along with Moses' sons and his wife, came to Moses into the wilderness where he was camping at the mountain of the true God. Then he said word to Moses, "I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her two sons." At once Moses sent out to meet his father-in-law, and he bowed down and kissed him. Each of them asked about the other's welfare, and they went into the tent. Moses related to his father-in-law all that Jehovah had done to Pharaoh and Egypt in behalf of Israel, all the hardships that had befallen them along the way, and how Jehovah had delivered them. Jethro rejoiced over all the good that Jehovah had done for Israel by rescuing them from Egypt. Then Jethro said, "Praised be Jehovah, who rescued you from Egypt, and from Pharaoh, who rescued the people from under Egypt's control. Now I know that Jehovah is greater than all the other gods, because of what he did to those who acted arrogantly against his people." Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifices for God, and Aaron and all the elders of Israel came to eat a meal with Moses, his father-in-law, before the true God. On the next day, Moses sat down as usual to serve as judge for the people. And the people kept standing before Moses from morning until evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he was doing for the people, he said, "What is this that you are doing for the people? Why do you sit here alone with all the people standing before you from morning until evening?" Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people keep coming to me to inquire of God. When a case arises, it comes to me, and I must judge between one person and the other, and I make known the decisions of the true God and his laws." Moses' father-in-law said to him, What you are doing is not good. You will surely wear out, both you and this people who are with you, because this is too big a load for you, and you cannot carry it by yourself. Now listen to me. I will give you advice, and God will be with you. You serve as representative for the people before the true God, and you must bring the cases to the true God. You should warn them about what the regulations and the laws are, and make known to them the way in which they should walk and the work that they should do. But you should select from the people capable men fearing God, trustworthy men hating dishonest profit, and appoint these over them as chiefs over thousands, chiefs over hundreds, chiefs over fifties, and chiefs over tens. They should judge the people when cases arise, and they will bring every difficult case to you. But every minor case that they will decide. Make it easier for yourself by letting them share the load along with you. If you do this, and God so commands you, you will be able to stand the strain, and everyone will go home satisfied. Moses immediately listened to his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose capable men out of all Israel and appointed them heads over the people, the chiefs of thousands, chiefs of hundreds, chiefs of fifties, and chiefs of tens. So they judged the people when the cases arose. A difficult case they would bring to Moses, but every minor case they would judge. After that, Moses saw his father-in-law off, and he went his way to his land. Exodus 19. In the third month after the Israelites went out of the land of Egypt, on the same day, they came to the wilderness of Sinai. They pulled away from Rephidim and They pulled away from the Rephidim and came to the wilderness of Sinai and camped in the wilderness. Israel camped there in front of the mountain. When Moses went up to the true God, and Jehovah called to him from the mountain, saying, "This is what you are to say to the house of Jacob and to the Israelites. You have seen for yourself what I did to the Egyptians in order to carry you on wings of eagles and to bring you to myself. Now, if you will strictly obey my voice and keep my covenant, you will certainly become my special property out of all peoples, for the whole earth belongs to me. You will become to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you are to say to the Israelites." So Moses went and summoned the elders of the people and declared to them all these words that Jehovah had commanded him. After that, all the people answered unanimously, "All that Jehovah has spoken, we are willing to do." Sorry, lost my. Moses immediately took the people's response to Jehovah. And Jehovah said to Moses, "Look, I am coming to you in a dark cloud, so that the people may hear when I speak with you, and so that they may always put faith in you as well." Then Moses reported the words of the people to Jehovah. Then Jehovah said to Moses, "Go to the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and they must wash their clothing, and they must be ready for the third day, because on the third day Jehovah will come down upon Mount Sinai before the eyes of all the people. You must set boundaries for the people all around it and tell them, 'Beware of going up to the mountain or touching its border. Anybody touching the mountain will surely be put to death. No hand is to touch him, but he will either be stoned or be shot through. Either whether beast or man, he will not live. But at the sound of a ram's horn, they may come up to the mountain.'" Then Moses went down from the mountain to the people, and he began to sanctify the people, and they washed their clothing. He said to the people, "Get ready for the third day. Abstain from sexual relations." On the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning, and there was a heavy cloud on the mountain, and a very loud sound of horn, and all the people in the camp began to tremble. Moses now brought the people out of the camp to meet the true God, and they took their place at the base of the mountain. Mount Sinai smoked all over because Jehovah came down upon it in fire, and its smoke was rising like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain was trembling violently. As the sound of the horn grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and the voice of the true God answered him. So Jehovah came down upon Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain. Then Jehovah called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. Jehovah now said to Moses, "Go down and warn the people not to try to force their way through to look at Jehovah, or many of them will perish. And let the priests who regularly come near to Jehovah sanctify themselves so that Jehovah may not strike them." Moses then said to Jehovah, "The people are not able to come up to Mount Sinai because you already warned us, saying, 'Set boundaries around the mountain and make it sacred.'" However, Jehovah said to him, "Go, descend, and come back up, you and Aaron with you, but do not let the priests and the people force their way through come up to Jehovah, so that he may not strike them." So Moses descended to the people and told them. So Exodus 20. Then God spoke all these words: "I am Jehovah your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You must not have any other gods besides me. You must not make for yourself a carved image or a form like anything that is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. You must not bow down to them, nor be enticed to serve them. For I, Jehovah, your God, am a God who requires exclusive devotion, bringing punishment for the error of fathers upon sons, upon the third generation and upon the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing loyal love to the thousandth generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. You must not take up the name of Jehovah your God in a worthless way, for Jehovah will not leave unpunished the one who takes up his name in a worthless way. Remember, the Sabbath day is to keep it sacred. You are to labor and do all your work for 6 days. But the seventh day is a Sabbath day Sabbath to Jehovah your God. You must not do any work, neither you nor your son nor your daughter nor your nor your slave man nor your slave girl nor your domestic animal nor your foreign resident who is inside your settlements. For in 6 days Jehovah made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and he began to rest on the seventh day. That is why Jehovah blessed the Sabbath day and made it sacred. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live a long time in the land that Jehovah your God is giving you. You must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely when you are a witness against your fellow man. You must not desire your fellow man's house. You must not desire your fellow man's wife, nor his slave man, nor his slave girl, nor his bull, nor his donkey, nor anything that belongs to your fellow man. Now all the people were witnessing the thunder and lightning, the sound of the horn, and the mountain smoking, and seeing this made them tremble and stand at a distance. So they said to Moses, "You speak with us, and we will listen, but do not let God speak with us, for fear that we will die." So Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid, for the true God has come to put you to the test, in order that the fear of him may continue with you, so that you may not sin." So the people kept standing at a distance, but Moses went near to the dark cloud where the true God was. Then Jehovah said to Moses, "This is what you are to say to the Israelites. You have seen for yourself that I spoke with you from heaven. You must not make gods of silver alongside me. You must not make gods of gold for yourselves. An altar of earth you are to make for me, and you will sacrifice your burnt offerings, your communion sacrifices, your flock, and your herd. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I will come to you, and I will bless you. If you make an altar of stones for me, you must not build it using stones cut with tools, for if you do use your chisel on it, you will profane it. And you must not go up by steps to my altar, uh, that your private parts may not be exposed on it." Exodus 21. These are the judicial decisions that you are to convey to them. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he will serve as a slave for 6 years, but in the seventh year he will be set free without paying anything. If he came by himself, he will go out by himself. If he is the husband of a wife, then his wife must go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children will become her masters, and he will go out by himself. But if the slave should insist and say, "I love my master, my wife, and my sons, I do not want to be set free," his master must bring him before the true God. Then he will bring him up against the door or the doorpost, and his master will pierce his ear uh, through with an awl, and he will be his slave for life. If a man sells his daughter as a slave, she will not go free in the same way that a slave man does. If her master is not pleased with her and he does not designate her as a concubine, but causes her to be purchased by someone else, he will not be entitled to sell her to foreigners, for he has betrayed her. If he selects her for his son, he is to grant her the rights of a daughter. If he takes another wife for himself, the sustenance, the clothing, and the marriage uh, due of the first wife are not to be diminished. If he will not render these three things to her, then she is to go free without paying any money. Anyone who strikes a man so that he dies must be put to death. But if he does it unintentionally and the true God lets it happen, I will designate it for you a place where he can flee. If a man becomes very angry with his fellow man and he deliberately kills him, the man must die, even if you have to take him from my altar. One who strikes his father or his mother must be put to death. If anyone kidnaps a man and sells him or is caught holding him, he must be put to death. Anyone who curses his father or his mother must be put to death. This is what should happen if men quarrel and one strikes his fellow man with a stone or a fist, and he does not die but is confined to his bed. If he is able to get up and walk around outdoors with the aid of a staff, then the one who struck him must be free from the punishment. He will only make compensation for the time the injured man lost from his work until he is completely healed. If a man strikes his slave man or his slave girl with a stick, and that one dies by his hand, that one must be avenged. However, if he survives for 1 or 2 days, he is not to be avenged, because he is someone bought with his owner's money. If men should struggle with each other, and they hurt a pregnant woman, and she gives birth prematurely, but no fatality results, the offender must pay the damages imposed on him by the husband of the woman, and he must pay it through the judges. But if a fatality does occur, then you must give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, blow for blow. If a man strikes the eye of a slave man or the eye of a slave girl, he destroys it. He is to let the slave go free in compensation for his eye. And if he knocks out the tooth of a slave man or of a slave girl, he is to let the slave go free in compensation for his tooth. If a bull gores a man or a woman and that one dies, the bull must be stoned to death, and its meat is not to be eaten, but the owner of the bull is free from punishment. But if a bull was in the habit of goring, and its owner had been warned, but he would not keep it under guard, and it killed a man or a woman, the bull is to be stoned, and its owner is also to be put to death. If a ransom is imposed on him, he must give as the redemption price for his life all that may be imposed on him. Whether it gored a son or daughter, it is to be done to the bull's owner according to this judicial decision. If the bull gored a slave man or a slave girl, he will give the price of 30 shekels to that one's master, and the bull will be stoned to death. If a man uncovers or digs a pit and does not cover it, and a bull or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit is to make compensation. He is to pay the price to its owner, and the dead animal will become his. If a man's bull hurts another's bull, and it dies, then they may sell the live bull and divide the price paid for it. They should also divide the dead animal. Or if it was known that a bull had been in the habit of goring, but its owner would not keep it under guard, he must make compensation with bull for bull, and the dead one will become his own. Exodus 22. If a man steals a bull or a sheep and he slaughters or sells it, he is to compensate with 5 bulls for the bull and 4 sheep for the sheep. If a thief is found in the act of breaking in and he gets struck and dies, there is no blood guilt for him. I thought it said stuck this whole time. Struck. Gets struck and dies. There's no blood guilt for him. But if it happens after sunrise, there is blood guilt for him. He must make compensation if he has nothing, and he must be sold for the things he stole. If what he stole is found alive in his possession, whether it is a bull or a donkey or a sheep, he is to make double compensation. If anyone puts his animals out to graze in a field or a vineyard and lets them graze in someone else's field, he is to make compensation with the best of his own field or with the best of his own vineyard. If a fire starts and spreads to thorn bushes and it causes sheaves of standing grain or a field to be consumed, the one who started the fire must make compensation for what was burnt. If a man gives his fellow man money or articles to keep, and these are stolen from the fellow man's house, if the thief is found, he must make double compensation. If the thief is not found, the owner of the house must be brought before the true God in order to determine whether he put his hand on the goods of his fellow man. In all cases of illegal possession of goods concerning a bull, a donkey, a sheep, a garment, or anything lost, of which he may say, "This is mine," both parties will present their case before the true God. The one whom God pronounces guilty is to make double compensation to his fellow man. If a man gives his fellow man a donkey or a bull or a sheep or any domestic animal to keep and it dies, and gets maimed or gets led away while no one is looking, there should be an oath made between them before Jehovah that he did not lay his hands on the goods of his fellow man, and the owner must accept it. The other man is not to make compensation, but if the animal has been stolen from him, he is to make compensation to its owner. If it was torn by a wild animal, he is to bring it as evidence. He is not to make compensation for something torn by a wild animal. But if anybody asks to borrow an animal from his fellow man, and it gets maimed or it dies while its owner is not with it, the man who borrowed it must make compensation. If its owner is with it, he is not to make compensation. If it was hired, the money paid for the hire is the compensation. Now, if a man seduces a virgin who is not engaged and lies down with her, he must pay the bride price for her to become his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he is to pay the money at the rate of the bride price. You must not allow a sorceress to live. Anyone lying down with an animal must surely be put to death. Whoever sacrifices to any gods but Jehovah alone is to be devoted to destruction. You must not mistreat a foreign resident or oppress him, for you were foreign residents in the land of Egypt. You must not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If you afflict him at all, so that he cries out to me, I will unfailingly hear his outcry, and my anger will blaze, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives will become widows, and your children will be fatherless. If you lend money to anyone poor of my people, someone who is dwelling with you, you must not become like a moneylender to him. You must not charge him interest. If you seize the garment of your fellow man as security for a loan, you are to return it to him by sunset, for it is his only covering, his clothing to cover his body. In what will he lie down to sleep? When he cries out to me, I will certainly hear, for I am compassionate. You must not curse God, nor curse a chieftain among your people. You must not hesitate to make offerings from your abundant produce and the overflow of your presses. The firstborn of your sons you are to give to me. This is what you should do with your bull and your sheep. 7 days it will continue with its mother. On the 8th day you are to give it to me. You should prove yourselves holy people to me, and you must not eat the flesh of anything in the field that has been torn by a wild animal. You should throw it to the dogs. And that is the end of AV8. Yeah. Is that right? Ah.